Here's the problem. Across industries, teams are rethinking how to tackle massive, complex challenges. But when these breakthroughs happen inside an organization, they often stay inside the organization. And the people doing this meaningful problem solving rarely get a platform to showcase their results and inspire others. So what's the solution? The IISE Innovation Cup, sponsored by the University of Tennessee, Knoxville, a global competition where teams showcase real results, real impact, and the power of industrial and systems engineering in action. It's where bold ideas become measurable breakthroughs and where incredible work in ISE is seen, celebrated, and shared. In this episode of Problem Solved, we go inside the Innovation Cup with committee leaders and last year's gold and silver award winners to uncover what great innovation really looks like and what it takes to stand out on the world stage. The IISE Innovation Cup was launched in 2020. Teams from all over the world submit their entries, and the top 3 teams are recognized each year at the IISE Annual Conference and Expo in May. To understand why the Innovation Cup exists and why teams across healthcare, manufacturing, supply chain, aerospace, and more compete each year, we spoke with committee member Tom Mazzone.
Thank you for inviting me to this. I'm very excited. Yes, I'm the program director for industrial engineering at NYU, and I'm an industry professor there. As a committee member, we have overall responsibility for administering the challenge, but also in many respects, not only just thinking about what it could be, but also promoting what we believe to be is the excitement of this challenge and the benefit to organizations. And that's why I'm happy to be here to talk about that.
So to start, why do you think this competition is different than others and what makes it stand out?
Well, I think the world is changing, okay, especially for industrial engineers. We have, I think, the premier skill set, I think, to deal with those changes. And the Innovation Cup is really an opportunity for both the IISE, but more importantly, I think, for the organizations or the teams that apply for this to demonstrate that we know how to use these skills to not only improve the organization, make it more efficient, make it more effective, but really build a capability to be more agile, innovative, to help the organization to adapt to a world that is really just being fundamentally impacted by changes in technology. So it's a great opportunity both to showcase, I think, what the IISE has to offer, but a great chance for teams to really demonstrate that they understand what organizations need and they can help organizations better adapt to the changing environments that we're in.
So what are some of the real world outcomes that you hope teams walk away with, like aside from the award itself?
Yeah, I think 2 things really. So the first is they get a chance to show that they understand that implementing change is much more than documenting a process and recommending an improved set of steps. That it really is a system-wide effort to engage all impacted stakeholders, both in what the change is, but also how do they work together to implement that change and sustain it. Change that is impactful requires an organizational engagement. I think that pulling that together and presenting it to the CUP committee is also helpful because they get the benefit of a panel of experts basically in this area. And what I found in participating in previous CUP challenges is that the team gets a lot of really good input and advice on not only what they did right, but also where there are opportunities for improvement.
For any organizations that are thinking about entering the competition, do you have any advice or encouragement?
Yeah, start with encouragement. I would say embrace the challenge. This is an opportunity to showcase what you're able to do. And it doesn't do you much good to have a really good idea without the ability to implement. And I think industrial engineers in particular are best positioned to help organizations implement these new ideas.
Can you share an inspiring moment from a past team, something that moved you in some way that you can share with us?
Yeah, I think the last year's winner is a good example. You know, they implemented a great innovation, digital signs in a hospital setting. And, that the reason why I found that so interesting and especially inspirational is that I think it's emblematic of the types of seemingly small changes that require a lot of organizational involvement and can really make an impact. What
Tom describes, a small change with a big ripple effect. is exactly what last year's Innovation Cup judges saw in the Mayo Clinic's winning project, revolutionizing patient care with digital door signs, enhancing efficiency and communication. I spoke to a member of that gold-winning team, Aniket Ramekar.
Thank you for having me here. I'm Aniket Ramekar, a senior business analyst at Mayo Clinic. I currently lead cross-departmental activities and initiatives within practice, innovation, and excellence team at Mayo Clinic. My role basically focuses on advancing enterprise goals through scalable best practice solutions. I've been working at Mayo Clinic for the past 6 years, so I absolutely love working in this industry. Again, it's complex, it's convoluted, but that's why we are here, right? We are trying to offer the tools to simplify, optimize, and innovate across different systems.
Yeah, so could you just walk us through the problem that your team was there to solve?
Absolutely. This is a project which is very close to my heart. So I always love sharing about my project with everyone. So basically, what we presented were on digital door signs. So if you were ever in the hospital, if ever an inpatient, I hope you never are, but if you were, you'll always see a door sign right outside your door. These door signs play a very critical role for every patient because they communicate patient isolation, precautions, and care considerations. Now, before this project, we used paper door signs. Again, these needed to be updated manually, sometimes every shift. So what we did with this project, our objective was to replace these static door signs with dynamic digital door signs to improve real-time communication and reduce all the manual steps.
Wow, that's a great idea. It's kind of like simple but brilliant. Could you just take a minute and talk about why the static signs were so problematic and why this needed to be solved?
Absolutely. I'll give you some numbers, and this will probably provide a little bit more context on how complex the system is. Right now, providers can select up to 256 possible isolations and precaution combinations. Remember this number. Now, this has to be updated every time there is change in the patient care, anytime they undergo surgery, there's a change in the diet plan. Again, these can happen overnight or in between shifts, creating additional communication challenges in between the providers, the care teams, and all the health unit staff available on the unit. Now, staff members need to select approximately 8 different paper door signs that encompasses these precautions for every patient on the floor. Now, staff need to prioritize other clinical tasks as well. Now, if you're a member of a staff or care team, it's not the only thing you're doing. You have to do more than 15 different tasks throughout your day. So updating these digital door signs sometimes can get missed. There are multiple different challenges that increase this cognitive burden on the clinical staff members. Again, this creates a huge opportunity for communication errors and issues. Again, it also leads to, and this is very hard for me to say, but it also leads to decreased staff satisfaction and negatively impacts patient care and experience as well.
With 256 possible isolation precaution combinations and paper signs that had to be updated every time a patient's status changed, clinical staff were juggling an unsustainable amount of manual communication. The result was cognitive overload, missed updates, and communication risks. Exactly the kind of problem a digital real-time solution could solve. I asked Aniket to break down the complex and detailed process his team followed to tackle this challenge.
Yeah, it was a very comprehensive process. So our team basically adopted the DMAIC framework, so define, measure, analyze, improve, control. We went through a thorough current state analysis. I worked with the team to observe the different care teams across the different spectrum of care. We did value stream analysis. I also went in and worked with the team. I observed them in different shifts to understand the level of tasks that they did. I reviewed their workflows. We also did multiple time and distance analysis with them. So I actually followed them with a measuring tape, and I went around behind them measuring each and every scenarios that happened. After that, we created a comprehensive implementation plan with stakeholders, clinical teams. Everyone was involved in selecting the final digital door sign product. Again, we did a risk analysis as well. We worked with, again, each and every unit and every clinical team. And finally, we implemented the real-time digital door signs, which was integrated with the scheduling systems, ensuring automatic updates and clear visibility.
And when you were going through the testing process, was there a moment that your team kind of realized, wow, this is going really well, like I think this is working?
Yeah, it's such a wonderful question to answer. I think the first time when everything came in seamlessly and they realized that they no longer have to manually go and update these signs, I think that's when they realized the huge potential of this. And now we are trying to scale this, not just from the initial departments, looking at the numbers, looking at the impact. There's more and more departments that are interested in having digital door signs rather than paper door signs.
And so for the Innovation Cup, your team presents this, and a big part of the challenge is to show measurable results. And so what are some of the measurable results that you present?
Absolutely. Again, I love sharing some of the things that we were able to achieve. One of the first and biggest things is improved accuracy of these room status. Again, 40 to 50% of these there was a reduction in issues due to missed signage placement. Now, again, as I mentioned before, it's not on our staff members. Our staff members are doing phenomenally well in taking care of the patients. It's because of the process. It's because of those manual updates and because of the number of things that they have to do. Again, reduction in walking distance. As I said, I measured how much on average they walk throughout the unit. Can you imagine this? 500 feet in Rochester every shift, or 1,000 feet in Arizona every day, just traveling around updating manually these door signs. And again, this can change at any time. It can change in a 4-hour shift. It can change in a 6-hour shift. Every time you go for surgery, again, you have to look at it manually. You have to go and then update this. So the amount of walking that they used to do completely went away. Now, I always tell it to all our members, I want you to work out at the gym, not where you work. Then time, I think up to 40 minutes saved per unit in Rochester and up to 15 minutes per patient in Arizona. Again, staff efficiency and satisfaction along with patients are the most critical and important things for us. So giving time back to our staff members to take care of the patients, that's the most critical thing for us.
And so I can tell you're really passionate about this. So why do you feel personally that it's important to share this with the public?
Oh my gosh, it's one of my most favorite projects. What it does, this demonstrates that how simple innovations can transform healthcare organizations and inspire others to adopt scalable solutions.
So somebody listening who might be interested in entering the Innovation Cup, what would be your advice?
Do it. I would absolutely go for doing it once more. I went in twice. I actually went in 2024 and I came back in 2025. I absolutely love it. This is a wonderful opportunity to showcase your project and highlight the critical work that you do. I personally also went there because I wanted to listen to others. But listening to others, I think I learned more, especially last year when I was listening to Smurfit and their manufacturing products and how they improve their processes. That gave me a lot of different ideas. Then listening to others for me personally, that's even more better than constantly listening to myself. Sometimes I listen to myself and I'm like, I think I can do better than what I'm doing right now by learning from different industries, not just from where I work.
As Aniket points out, the Innovation Cup brings together teams from all kinds of industries. So next we turn to Rishabh Bhandawat from Smurfit WestRock, whose team earned the 2025 Silver Award for their project, Optimizing Spare Parts Inventory for Packaging Machinery Business.
Thank you for having me. I'm Rishabh Bhandawat, and I'm a data scientist at Smurfit WestRock.
And your team won silver in the Innovation Cup in 2025. Congratulations. And can you talk about that challenge that your team set out to solve?
So for people that don't know what Smurfit WestRock are, that are listening to the podcast, we are a packaging company. So if you think the Coca-Cola cans, Red Bull cans, they all come in a cardboard box. So we make that. And these were all examples of mostly consumer side of things that a consumer would see. But we also produce a lot of corrugated packaging as well. To package things, you need a machine. So let's say you have a canning facility and you want to package 12 cans into a box. So this packaging division, the packaging machinery division, builds machines that can package cans into the boxes. So it's a very niche division, but very, very innovative. We built a very lot of innovative tools within that section of the business. Since we're building these machines need a lot of spare parts. And these spare parts could be to build the actual machine or to provide service. We have service contracts to our customers that we've already sold machines. So these could be replacement parts. What our team worked on is making sure that the packaging machinery plant at Smyrna always has the right equipment, the right quantities of these spare parts available to them so that they are able to meet their customers' needs that need a replacement, or they're able to build the machinery that they want.
So essentially, Rishabh's team set out to solve a classic industrial engineering challenge, balancing inventory levels for thousands of spare parts. Too much inventory ties up capital that could be used elsewhere. Too little inventory leads to shortages, downtime, production delays, and unhappy customers waiting for weeks for a critical part. Their goal was simple but impactful. Make sure the right part is available at the right time without the waste, cost, and operational friction that comes from poorly managed stock. Rishabh then walks us through how his team approached the problem and the methods they used to turn this into an award-winning innovation.
We first took a deep dive into the data. We looked at the historical consumption patterns, looked at lead times for where we're getting these spare parts from. So with that, we built an optimization framework that balanced your service level and your inventory that you would tie up in working capital. So we developed a tool in-house and we call it SPIN, which is Spare Parts Inventory Optimization Tool, which uses your historic demand and then makes predictions on what your forecast could look like, and then calculates lead time and takes a calculated risk on saying, okay, based on what we see and what the lead time has looked like, we should stock this quantity and we should keep buying at this rate. And if we do that, we will be able to meet a service level of XY percentage.
And so after you've run the model and you've tested it for a certain length of time, what kinds of things do you measure?
Yeah. One of the things that is very obvious that can be measured is cost, right? We were able to identify $1 million in stale inventory. And even with business growth, so over the course of the project, we did see significant growth in the business. We were able to see $200,000 in inventory reduction costs. So this is purely savings from changing your reorder point and reorder quantity. And the last measurable outcome that we saw was there was 90% reduction in shortages.
That's amazing. So let's talk beyond numbers. Now, on a personal level, you've said that it feels meaningful for you to share your work with others beyond your company. So can you tell me why that feels important to you?
Yes. So after grad school, right? In grad school, we always discuss, everyone, like we'll all discuss what we're working on. We'll discuss what our dissertations are about. But that sort of changes when you're in corporate, right? We don't discuss ideas as often. We'll read about things that people are doing, but it's interesting to see them implemented and having a good success rate and what the story behind everything was. So that's why I think sharing ideas you can replicate or tackle similar challenges that you are facing in your organization when you discuss ideas.
And what advice can you leave for people who are thinking about submitting?
I would say innovation doesn't always mean big tech, fancy models, or technology, AI. It can be just reimagining, rethinking existing problems and implementing them in your scope to improve operations, and just having a data-driven approach to make these decisions.
And now we hear from Bill Harrington, Innovation Cup Committee member who offers vital insight into how the judging process works and what separates a good project from a great one. Before we begin, a quick note for anyone planning to submit this year. Bill's full, unedited interview is available on YouTube. He goes into far more detail than we could fit here, and it's genuinely useful guidance straight from a judge's perspective. You'll find the link in the show notes, so if you are submitting an entry, don't leave his advice on the table.
Yeah, hi, I'm Bill Harrington. I work for St. Elizabeth Healthcare currently. I'm a director of quality improvement. I also teach at University of Louisville and University of Cincinnati. I've worked in manufacturing for the first 10 years of my career, and for the last 14 years, I've been in healthcare, pretty much in a role doing continuous improvement kind of work and advising teams through that work.
Well, thank you for talking to us. And let's just start by talking about the judging criteria, and maybe you can help us understand, for those who are thinking about submitting, what is the criteria and what makes a strong submission?
Right. So there's four high-level criteria that a submission is evaluated with. First is challenge. That really kind of gets at the purpose of the project. Why was the project or why was the initiative so important to the organization to do? That needs to be supported by evidence. So what was the performance gap? What was the impact to the organization? Was there any kind of societal relevance to it? That helps as well. And what uniqueness was there? So that's challenge. Then there's solution. The solution has three criteria of relevance, novelty, and how well it's quantified. Implementation is now the third category. So we've covered challenge and solution, now into implementation. And that's going to be one, has it been implemented and how long has it been implemented for? We look for at least 1 year. Okay. Now we don't want a submission that's 20 years old, right? Because that's so far in the past. But we also don't want to have it be something that we just did last month and it hasn't been tested in terms of its sustainability. And then finally is communication. And communication involves components of a video. So submitters will put in a video that shows or demonstrates what the project or what the improvement initiative was. There's then a presentation, and then there's a Q&A session. The ability in that space, I like to say a picture's worth 1,000 words, right? So when you're doing your video, you may be dealing with something that's a bit abstract. Okay, well, can you show a process map? Are there interviews that you could do with stakeholders that could articulate the benefits that they've had? In my past, when I worked in manufacturing, I was advised to take a picture or a video clip of the process from before the change and then to do it after the change. So if you can get up at a high point of the factory, where you can be observing above, if there's a mezzanine or something, those are great video clips to show how do things flow before and after. Do we see a change there? Can we see better organization, better just flow of the process? Those kinds of things. That's really how things are evaluated, and it's kind of some tips and tricks along the way, but four basic criteria of the challenge, the solution, implementation, and the communication. So challenge, solution, implementation, communication are those four components.
Okay. And now this is a team challenge, so can you talk a little bit about what makes a great team?
So first thing would be, what makes a great team is one where all the core stakeholders are represented. And then how did that team work together to really solve the problem? Once you get in the work to help, what I find really helps with the storming, norming, and performing is to get off on the right foot. And clearly stating what the problem is and, how you're going to measure it and what solution, before you get into any solutions or anything like that, make sure you have the problem well defined coming in. But the next thing I would say is once you have that problem defined and what the goal or the objective is to ask the stakeholders in the team members, what are you hopeful this project would resolve? What are you fearful could go wrong? Before we start going any deeper in the problem, and well before we're talking about solutions, we're getting out on the table, what are the things that are most important to people in this journey? I'll give a great example. In healthcare, we might be working on reducing turnaround time in an operating room. So between surgical cases, we want to reduce the time from the close of one case to the open or cut of the other. All right. Well, in going from close or final stitch or starting stitches or starting close of case 1 and going to in first step in incision of case 2, that time is time where we're not doing surgery, right? No surgery is happening during that time. But there's a lot of really important work that has to happen, right? So if value add is the surgery and non-value add is all the other stuff, some of that stuff, though, is very important from a patient safety standpoint. So if we were trying to reduce the time between cases, that might be a goal or something that we're hopeful for, is that we would reduce that time. Maybe we don't run over, staff doesn't have to stay around and work too much overtime. Those could be all the hopes. But then the fears could be well, what if we rush and we jeopardize patient safety, right? So getting those things identified on the front end, and what I find that does is that helps to avoid unintended consequences.
Well, I know that potential submitters are going to find all of that advice extremely helpful. What do you think that participants will gain out of this experience?
You'll gain some maturity for certain in this, in terms of your walk in the industrial and systems engineering journey that you're on, right? And that will alone benefit an organization. You can do it for the award, that's fine, but I think the lessons really are learned in the journey.
I want to thank all of our guests again, Tom Mazzone, Aniket Ramekar, Rishabh Bhandawat, and Bill Harrington, for sharing their insights and for reminding us what makes the IISE Innovation Cup so unique. This competition isn't about having the newest technology or the biggest budget. It's about thinking like an industrial and systems engineer, seeing systems clearly, reducing complexity, solving the real problem, and creating a measurable impact. Whether it's reimagining workflows in healthcare, transforming systems in manufacturing, or simply looking at an everyday process with fresh eyes, these teams prove that innovation comes from intention, not spectacle. And presenting at the Innovation Cup pushes you forward. As our guest said, you mature as a professional, you gain perspective you can't get inside your own organization, and you benefit from thoughtful feedback, both from judges and from the other presenters in the room. So if you've solved a meaningful challenge in your organization, large or small, this is your moment. Submissions for the IISE Innovation Cup, sponsored by the University of Tennessee, Knoxville, are now open. Visit iise.org and see our show notes to learn more. Take the first step towards sharing your breakthrough on a global stage. Thanks for listening to Problem Solved. And remember, every great solution is a story worth telling.